Benfica Podcast is one of the founding members of Benfica Independent. Benfica Independent is an independent platform made by fans for fans, and in it, you can find our podcast along with many other podcasts, along with articles of opinion, video segments, and much, much more. We're also on patreon.com/Benfica Independent with exclusive contents for our patrons.
Hasta que no estás aquí dentro no sabes la grandeza de este equipo. Sí, es un club que tiene una grandeza que no se comprende si no estás aquí dentro.
São de uma magia única, benfiquista, que só nós sentimos assim. Por muitos desgostos que possamos ter, valores mais altos se levantam. E o valor mais alto que se levanta em termos futebolísticos chama-se Benfica.
Quero o Benfica intimidar o adversário. Quero o manto sagrado entrar com vocês em qualquer estado e assustá-los, pá! É isso que eu quero!
Okay, AT is there. AT is there. AT is there. Okay. All right, we're ready. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Talking to the Dog Benfica podcast. My name is Alfredo Fumaças. With me, as always, Dave de Oliveira. What's happening, Dave? Here we are for another podcast.
Yeah, another podcast, another night, another podcast, as Steve used to say. Great to be back on. We're still winning, baby. Just keep winning, and we keep looking forward. We keep winning, and we keep looking forward to doing these podcasts. So great to be back on here tonight, Alfredo.
Yeah, awesome. So here we are for episode number 459, and as Dave alluded to, keep winning. So we're perfect at the international break. Something that was a bit of kind of like a if you're traveling or sailing on a ship, and if your route is from the start of the season and the end is the championship, we've kind of reached kind of some safe landing in between there now, and we're actually perfect. Dave, did you ever think that we'd be perfect up until this point?
The way the last couple of seasons have been going, I'm going to be honest and say no, I don't think we would. We were going to be perfect, but it's a welcomed change. I think we all deserve a little bit of this in our lives after the last couple of seasons that our club has put us through. So I'll be honest, was not expecting a perfect start, but pleasantly surprised, and I'll take this.
Yeah. No, and some people, and I kind of feel the same way that they like this monotonous um, life, Benfica following life, right? Where it's just like the question is, how many are we gonna win by, not if we're gonna win today. So it's been good, man. I think that a lot of the stress that we had last year in terms of watching games and never knowing how the games were gonna turn out at the end, because there was always a tale of two halves. It's kind of turned into something where you could actually sit there and enjoy the games. Just sit there and enjoy it, and feel confident that this team is capable of great things, of turning things around, of scoring goals. So it's been good, man. It's been good so far, and as I mentioned to you guys, I'm gonna take every win as I can. I don't care if it's an ugly one, if it's a pretty one, if it's 1-0, if it's a goal with score with the ass. I'm gonna take those wins, man, because like you said, we've suffered enough. We have suffered enough. But anyway, here we are on the podcast before the international break. Next week we will not be here because of international break. But on tonight's podcast, episode number 459, we'll look back at the Juventus game, Marítimo, and obviously we'll talk about a couple things with the international break, with Rafa saying goodbye to the national team. You'll hear our take on that, and and also to close out, we'll look at October. We'll look at October, and because it's going to be an extremely busy October month for Benfica, with extremely important games, both domestically and the Champions League. Um, and as you know, the World Cup is right around the corner in November, obviously, and then we're going to be stopped for a month and a half. Dave, do you know what that is
I'm
for the World Cup?
still, I'll double check here on Zero Zero, but I was pretty certain I had read that there's going to be some Taça de Liga matches, but don't quote me on that. Let me quickly do a search here and see what I can get back to you. But yeah, definitely some break there in the middle of October for Benfica.
Yeah, want to say hello to all the Freddies that have joined us. I know that we're usually here on Tuesdays, but um, as you could hear by my voice, I've had a little bit of a chest cold, and yesterday was going to be difficult for us to do the podcast, especially with the way my voice sounded. Sounds a little better today, but still not there yet. But you know, but we're here nonetheless. We're here ahead of this international break. We're happy to be talking about Benfica. Let's talk about the game against Juventus, where Benfica traveled up into Turin in Italy to play Juventus. And I'll give you the lineup. Vlaco Dimos was in goal. Tony Silva, Otamendi, and Grimaldo across the back. Enzo and Tino, Neres, João Mario and Rafa behind Gonçalo Ramos. Heading into this game, obviously, and us having discussed here that the games against Juventus are really the games they're going to dictate whether or not we go on to the next round, to the knockout stages, because we figured that PSG is going to run away with this group, and Juventus, the way they've been, a little bit in shambles and inconsistent, and also missing some key players. We figured that it would be a good opportunity to go to Turin. Nonetheless, I thought that get into the game, Dave. I thought that Benfica approached the game kind of cautious, with a lot of respect, for Juventus, but maybe a little bit intimidation, and kind of that's what it felt. Giving up that goal in the 4th minute, and then kind of like going down a little bit, but responding well after that.
Yeah, almost like Benfica had to take that first punch in the face to kind of wake up and kind of settle into the game. Obviously, you don't want to go down to Juventus 4 minutes into the match in Turin, right? But I think after that 15-minute mark, Benfica really settled in, and it was really Benfica's game from that point on, right? Benfica controlled the match, and it was more of Juventus responding to Benfica's game plan. But yeah, I definitely would agree. Benfica, I think, gave a little bit too much respect for this Juventus club, and Juventus made us pay for it early on, but ultimately, once we took that first punch, we kind of woke up to our senses, and we started playing our own game, and ultimately had a great response back.
Yeah. No, and and after the half, I mean we've already obviously the goal before the half it helped, right? And I think that was something that I don't know if Benfica deserved it at that time. We sure were a little bit better in the second half of the first half, uh, but that penalty was kind of like a silly play by the Juventus player. But I have to give praise to the VAR for going and picking that up. And being able to call the referee and say that, look, you got to go look at this play because it looks like the Juve player, despite being out of bounds, tries to challenge Gonzalo Ramos and ends up stepping on him, and it looks like a penalty. And those are probably the plays, Dave, that we never get that at
Yeah.
domestic level. But obviously with international and the way some of these referees are and the way VAR is supposed to be applied, it just it made a lot of sense and it was good for us. But at that time, I thought that we already had kind of settled down, and we started playing our game and we started building and we started getting more confidence as the game went on. But that goal by João Mario, the penalty kick before the half, really helped us. And then we also heard in the paper there was a lot of questions on what was said at the halftime, and I think that Roger Smith just said, go out there and play your game. We're better than them, and as it turned out, that's what the team did. And I thought that the second half was all Benfica, and I thought just the score line, and we were talking about before we came on here live, that the score line is somewhat flattering for Juventus.
Yep, that 100%. That I think the only takeaway that I have for this game is we lack some more finishing in some of these opportunities that we had, because 2-1 on the score line. For those who didn't watch the game, you would think, Juventus was still in this match, but really, if we had some better finishing and we were able to capitalize on a lot of those opportunities that we had, especially in the second half, we're looking at a 3-4-4-1 score line. Mattia Perin made a couple of big saves, got bailed out by a post there as well. But 4-1 is not that far-fetched of a scoreline that we could have seen from this game, especially with the opportunities that we had, but just some poor finishing, and ended up being a 2-1 scoreline.
Yeah, no, and Sergio Cerqueira is saying the way the team bounces back versus the past 2 years has made a huge difference. Yeah, when you're confident, not only on the system that you're playing in, your game idea, and also your teammates, the way everybody is involved in this team, I think that gives an overall sense of that they could do things, that they believe in the things that they could do, which has never been, it hasn't been the case in the past couple of years, and you've heard me speak about just the body language of the technical staff on the bench, and the way the players celebrate with the technical staff and how happy the technical staff is really a difference, and it feels a lot more like a unit, like a group, than in past years. So I think that that's one of the factors why the team has been able to do so well, and also get back into these games. But really, a deserved win by Benfica, and I know that we looked at on the preview. We looked at what Benfica's track record had been against Juventus, and it was very favorable, and we continue to pile it on. But let me ask you this: I know that you know some Juventus fans. How did that go?
Loved it. I loved it. I told you I was coming into this match confident because I've been watching some Juventus games going into this, and they're not the Juve of old. And even after the match this past weekend, they lost or tied. They definitely dropped points. No, that was before Benfica. They just tied Berlusconi's new team, Monza, or they lost to Monza. They Di Maria picked up a red card, and they were playing most of the match a man down. So they lost after Benfica. I'm still Allegri is still the coach, to be totally honest with you, but we'll see if he's still in charge on the return leg at the Estadio de Luz. But this Juventus is definitely struggling now, and I'm just happy that we were able to pull together and get that the 3 points.
Yeah, Juventus, having lost the first game against PSG, coming back home and with the pressure of having to win this game to remain somewhat competitive in the group stage. But when we're looking at the stats, and I got up, the goal point stats, we dominated in almost in every single stat, with the exception of the amount of fouls that were committed. We committed 15 fouls, and Juve only committed 9 fouls, but all the other stats, main stats, are all in favor of Benfica. Shots on target, actions in the opponent's box, corners, pass efficiency. Everything. Even possession. Who would have thought that Benfica would have had more possession than Juventus playing in Turin?
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Hey,
mind.
I was confident going into this match. I was kind of scared there though, right? Going down four in the fourth minute, but team
Yeah,
responded well, and once the ball was rolling in our favor, never looked back, and it was great to see. I've got a stat here, not to wrap up the gamer, but only the first time Benfica has ever won in Italy against an Italian club, and only the second Portuguese team to ever do so. Porto beat Milan in 96, 97 at the San Siro, but Italy isn't too favorable on the Portuguese clubs, and we've got a result in turn there. So lots to be proud about.
yeah. No, you were saying about this weekend, and Manny Valadão is saying Juventus coach blames Benfica game for a loss this weekend. Yeah, this when it rains it pours, right? And so I guess it's just a compounding of misery after misery, bad loss, and I think that um, perhaps and obviously this is a Benfica podcast, but I'm gonna say it. Juventus is probably gonna look at this international break as somewhat of a reset, and I don't know how much more rope Allegri is gonna get from the directive
Yeah,
after this international break.
a couple of the Freddies here, many Valadon saying Juve can't afford to fire Allegri, but I know they've got some financial difficulties. They're still trying to. I think the worst thing they could have done was bring in Ronaldo there. I know they thought he was the last missing piece to put him over the edge for Champions League, but if you've seen, the team's only regressed since Ronaldo was there. But I think they need to make that a Allegri change and come in with somebody fresh and build a new culture there. But Allegri, if you want to make some ties, is like kind of like our second coming of JJ, right? Everybody thought he was gonna come and save Juventus, but it's hasn't happened these last couple of seasons and gone the other way. So it's gonna be
Yeah,
interesting to see here these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I actually read something on a ball or one of the papers in one of the websites today about how when Ronaldo was at Juventus, there was a certain expectation of how the team should behave and the ambition. And I think that what whoever said that, whoever was implying it, was that after Ronaldo left, there wasn't that ambition or that hunger or that expectation or that competitive edge. And I think the team has gone down since then. So whether it was because they made that effort to go get Ronaldo for the money that they want and got him, and then it kind of made things worse for them afterwards. I just don't know. But a lot of people are kind of connecting Ronaldo leaving with the Juventus decline. So take it for what it is, and obviously I'm not the biggest Ronaldo fan, as a lot of people know, but But certainly a far cry from the Juventus that we're used to. But hey, I'll take it. I'll take it every day.
I'll take it.
I'll
I'm
take
not
it
gonna
every day.
complain one bit at all.
You got stats on this game, and then we can move on, or
Uh,
did you already
the
mention?
only the only stat was that first time Benfica's ever won in Italy against an Italian club there. So
Yeah.
and only the second Portuguese club to ever do so. So historic night in turn for sure last Wednesday.
Yep. So turning our attention now to Marítimo, and this is a game that on the preview, I mentioned that this game had all the makings for a trap game, because Marítimo hadn't won a game. They were at Stadio Luz, coming off a European game, and before an international break, I thought that there was so many factors, and maybe in the past this happens, right? And now it's a different Benfica, and you look at this and you go, okay, well, shit. Sporting lost, right? Porto tied, and usually Benfica just shits the bed too. Instead of taking advantage of their direct opponents losing ground, they shit the bed. But screw the trap game, screw shit in the bed. We're going out in style, 5-0 to Maritim. Obviously, a good win, and then a game that was very key. And Dave, you and I had spoken here about possible rotation, but no such thing from Schmidt. Flaco Dimos, Ba, Tony Silva, Otamendi, and Grimaldo. Fred came in instead of Tino. That was the only change. And Enzo in the middle. Neres, João Mario, Rafa, and Ramos. So really not a lot of rotation. We felt, well, against Maritim hasn't won yet. Maybe this is the perfect time to kind of change that midfield duo. Give Enzo a break. Maybe give it some more minutes to Musa up front. But that wasn't the case. Benfica went all out because I think, and I think the more we see and learn about Roger Smith, we understand how smart he is in terms of the way he thinks soccer and the way he reads the game and the way he reads things. I think that now thinking back, right, and hindsight is 2020, but thinking back and thinking, if he makes too much of a rotation to the squad, maybe that sends out a bad message, meaning we feel this game is easy enough for us to give some guys that don't usually play some playing time. And I think that maybe that sets the wrong message, or that sends the wrong message to the squad. By going with your full squad, with the exception of Fred coming in for Tino, and obviously that's not too much of a downgrade there, I think you really send the message to the squad that we're serious and we need this win. And sure enough, that's the approach that he's had. And look, I would have liked to seen Enzo get a rest, but I think that the way Roger Schmidt is approaching these fixtures, and especially understanding the context within the fixtures and where you're playing and how you're playing them, I think that it's been a really good approach. And obviously, when you're winning, and winning cures all. But certainly, the approach and the thought process behind it, I can't say anything about it.
No, how can we complain? We're like on this close to historic winning streak here to open up a season, and Roger Schmidt's been pushing all the right buttons so far. So who are we to question here? Two guys behind a couple of microphones on a Benfica podcast, whether or not he rotated the squad against a last place team, right? This is just a luxury that we have at this point of the season, Alfredo, that we're debating or not if we should be rotating the squad. Where last season we were debating players who should be in the starting lineup. Now we're debating whether or not we should be rotating players. Just a luxury to have when you're sitting on top and undefeated. So it's a good problem to have. And luckily we do have the international break here, so a couple of these guys can get some rest. Guys like Enzo, like you mentioned, I would have liked to have seen him, but he did get subbed off around the hour mark there, so got a little bit of rest. But at the end of the day, it's another not to get too ahead of ourselves, but we can't really dispute Roger Schmidt for not rotating the squad at this point when we're still putting up results, right? So in Schmidt we trust.
Yeah. No, and Sergio Cerqueira is always asking, is Ba officially number one? Um,
Uh,
I wouldn't say he's like a clear number one. I think they could both interchange. The thing
yeah, one A,
that
one B.
I, I think the biggest difference between Ba and Gilberto, aside from the age, the stamina, um, the horsepower, right? I think Gilberto brings a lot more experience to the game. But in terms of Bob, because you still see Bob making some mistakes that are relatively of somebody that's still yet to be in a game and learn things about the game. But Ba and for them, and obviously I haven't been at Stade Luge this season yet, and I haven't gotten to see him play live. But from some of the things that I read, that this my man is up and down that wing all day. All day he's up and down that wing, and it never shows signs of being tired. While Gilberto, around the 60-65 minute, you're already thinking that Gilberto is done. He can't make another sprint up front to accompany the attack. So I think that maybe that's what Ba has, and then I think that Ba also has that he has really good service, and he likes to drift into the middle as he gets into the final third and take those shots, which is something that Gilberto doesn't do as often as Ba does. So I think that, and we've all been saying, we always thought it was a matter of time before Ba would assume the position. Um, but I think that either one I'd be happy with. I just think that Ba right now probably offers more in terms of stamina and lung, and also the quality of service. He may not have the same understanding that Gilberto has with Neres, which I think it counts for a lot. But I think that will be developed over time. Um, 28th minute, 1-0 by Rafa. Then in the second half, we opened up the floodgates. 47 2-0. Ramos assisted from Ba. 64 3-0. Ramos assisted from Rafa. Then we had the substitutions. 82nd 4-0, 88 5-0. Neres from Tino, and then Draxler, which got some more time in a play that I thought the Maritim defense was very passive, but you got to give credit to Draxler, a rocket, right foot rocket right into the net, and look, I think it's great for him, for a guy that hasn't played for a long time, to be able to get playing time and get a goal in front of the fans, and feeling the love from the fans and the appreciation. I think it's great. But yeah, a natural win for me against a very weak Maritim side that I don't know, if they don't turn things around quick. I think they might be on their way down. And I know it's early in the season, but usually these holes are very hard to get out of. And they're what 0 for 6 or 5?
Over 7.
0 for 7. So
Yep.
And they just got a new coach, but it's always hard. Dave, stats on this game.
Yeah, stats here for the Maritimo game. 13th consecutive victory for Benfica to open up the season. They're 2 away now from tying Sven Goran Eriksson's record of 15, which occurred in the 82-83 season. And in this match, Benfica held 75% possession, which is the highest this season for any club in the Portuguese league. So, as you alluded to, complete domination from Benfica in this match.
Yeah, no, but yeah, goal point is 72, 75. I think we get the gist, right? But yeah, like you mentioned, I think that up until this point, and I think they only started measuring it in the past maybe 6 or 7 years, the amount of possession that a team has had throughout games, and Benfica is leading this year since it's been recorded. But yeah, every stat again, I mean, 23 shots against 4, 12 of them on target against 1. And as you alluded, the 72% versus 28%. And a Marítimo team that just came with every intent not to lose by many, but it ended up being being bad for them. You had 4-0. I had 3-0, and you know, it's a season of Benfica exceeding expectations, if you could say that, right, Dave?
Just based on previous seasons, I think we've all mentioned in the past that this is the Benfica we expect to give these thumpings to these smaller clubs in Portugal, but unfortunately, just the way the last couple of seasons have been going, that hasn't been the case. So it's definitely been a much welcomed and pleasant surprise to see the Benfica of old that you and I have all been expecting. So
Yeah.
I'll agree with that there.
Yeah, I also forgot to mention that John Brooks did get his debut. Came in the 89th minute, and the first play he was involved in, it was a foul by him.
Well, a lot of not to turn it away from Brooks here, but a lot of the Freddies are mentioning Antonio Silva
Yeah,
in the chat here too. Man, it's just on a completely different level. They're saying not
yeah,
sure how we're going to take him out of the lineup, but it's a good problem to have. I guess we got to cross that bridge when we get there, but
yeah.
just appreciate it right
I
now while we can.
I think that the past couple of episodes here, podcasts, you've heard us gushing about Antonio Silva, especially me, and I think that at this point it's just become a normal thing, right? Um, he's exceeded everyone's expectations, surpassed in terms of 18 years old. Soon he will be 19 in October, but it's kind of surpassed that idea of a young player, and I think that there's very little people that look at him as a young player anymore. That they consider him a starter for this team, and he has done everything. And he has proven a lot to a lot of people that he deserves to be in this lineup. So, like Dave says, yeah, it's a good problem to have, man, for sure. But certainly, I think that yes, it's good to be recognized, and I certainly want to recognize Antonio Silva, and we gushed over him. I just think that at this point, he's just for me, he's there, man. He's there, and it's not going to surprise me when he makes a mistake because he doesn't have the experience yet. He doesn't have the number of games in his leg and in his head, and he will make mistakes. But I mean, I've ran out of adjectives to really qualify Antonio Silva in the way that he's been playing, the maturity that he's shown, and also there was a whole clip, and I think that everybody watched it, in which Bonucci comes up to João Mario, and the kid steps in. He puts a finger in his face, and there was an interview with him not too long ago, and what he says, I wasn't defending any player. I was defending the club, and that's what we're supposed to do: defend the team and defend the club. So I've like I said, I've run out of good things to say about Antonio Silva, man. It's just at this point, I think he's the biggest surprise of the season so far.
And the way he's been going, I know like he's definitely broken out these last couple of weeks. He wasn't called up to the senior national team this time around, but considering that's a position that he plays, that the senior squad is pretty thin in. If he keeps this up for another month, why can't he be on that World Cup squad? There's really nobody that I'm looking at the roster right now. If he's able to keep this up in top form, I wouldn't be surprised. I would be more surprised if he was left off that World Cup squad, to put it that way.
Yeah, let's now being in international break. This is the wrong one. Let me see here. Yeah, 12 players to the national team, and I'll give you a list. João Mario and Ramos, actually, João Mario and Rafa were the original call-ups, and we'll get into the Rafa thing in a little bit. For Portugal senior, Antonio Silva, Henrique Araújo, Paulo Bernardo and Samuel to the U21, Diego Moreira to the U19, Otamendi and Enzo to Argentina, Vlaco Dimos to Greece, Orsnes to Norway, and Ba to Denmark were the 12 players to be called. Excuse me. But yeah, so Rafa was called, right? Rafa was called, and a few days later, before the national team was supposed to show up, um, you know, Rafa decided thanks, but no thanks, right? And I got to be honest. When I saw the squad come out, I was jealous, Dave. I was jealous of Sporting because Sporting got no players that were called up. And and I had this conversation with Diogo, who was on the chat today, about the national team, about Rafa and this and that. But I'm not a huge fan of the national team. I'm not a huge fan of ever since Fernando Santos took over and this whole Ronaldo thing. It's just I kind of don't really identify with the national team in the same way that I used to identify with the golden generation when Figo, Rui Costa were there. So the national team has lost a little bit of allure to me, in understanding how there's a lot of influences and nepotism, if you will, in the national team, and in terms of um, the agents that represent players, the interests that are involved. I thought that Rafa did the right thing. We're looking here. We got a graph up that he got called for 25 games. 25 times he got called up. He only started 8 games out of that. And then we have that whole story that
Is that started or came off the bench?
started 8 games, 17 off the bench.
Okay.
So he's participated in 25 games. He's been obviously, I think he's been called up more than that, obviously, but that's his stats. And then um, you had that whole story that Rafa was hurt before the Serbia game, and it was a game that Portugal played, and there was a story that the papers ran that Rafa didn't show commitment to the national team. Fernando Santos would eventually come out and kind of deny those words, but there was something that came out, and Rafa was left to, I don't know, he must have been left with a bad taste in his mouth. And then there was the whole thing. If you guys recall, there was a call up for the playoffs, right? For the playoffs that Portugal had to play, and Rafa wasn't included. And at that time, if you guys remember, it coincided with Rafa scoring that amazing goal where he dribbled like 3 or 4 guys from the midfield and scored, and he didn't really celebrate. And at the time, we questioned it. They said, well, why didn't he celebrate a goal that was probably is going to be on his highlight reel of best of all time goals that he's ever scored? And it was right around the time that national team call up list came out, and he wasn't there. And I don't know if that had something to do with it, but certainly there's been a little bit of animosity or separation between Rafa and the national team. So I think that, to me, I would do the same thing. He's going there and he's not getting the start. He said that he kind of renounced the national team and he's no longer going to play for the national team because of personal reasons, and he hopes that those could be left in private. And he wants to focus 100% on Benfica, and like, I understand from a Benfica standpoint. I wish that no Benfica players were going to the national team, to be honest with you, because like I said, I don't identify with this national team. But yeah. What are your thoughts, Dave? What do you think about this whole Rafa thing?
I mean, now that you're bringing back some points about that time he scored that goal and he was left off the national team that time around, it's bringing back some memories. So at that time, he wasn't playing well. He was definitely not up to his form. Benfica wasn't up to their form as well. So there was an argument to be made there that he wasn't on the top of his form to qualify for a call up in that position. But I remember, I believe it must have been the Euro 2020 when they played it in 2021, and they expanded the rosters, and you and I and Cristiano discussed Rafa being one of those last roster spots, and he barely just made it on that squad because they had expanded the rosters um, because of COVID at that time. And to be honest, in that tournament, I wasn't expecting him to play a single minute, but he surprised me when he came off the bench. And right, how many times have we discussed Rafa and speed? And Chris always says you can't teach speed, and he was a much needed injection of speed in that Fernando Santos system, right? So gonna be a little bit disappointed not to see him at the World Cup, but again, for the limited minutes that he was being used, I'll be happy to take those minutes on Benfica and have him rest up during the international break.
Yeah, look, I think that, and Rafa's gonna know this better than anyone, right? But if you get called to a group, and within that group, there's those favorite players that always get the playing time, and other guys are kind of seen as fillers. And maybe that's what Rafa feels, that he's a bit of a filler within the national team, that he doesn't really have a real role, nor is he taken serious as a viable option. I spoke to Cristiano yesterday, and he was asking, what do you think about this Rafa thing? And his thing was twofold. Also, one, he kind of understood that, if you get called all the time and you don't get used, and then there's this whole history behind the questioning his commitment. He understood that, but he made a point for being called to the national team should always be a motive of to being honored to represent your country in the biggest competitions, in the biggest games. That should always be something that you welcome. So I understood that when Cristiano says. I just think that there's other things that we're not aware of that went on, whether it was made public by the media or not. But I think that Rafa respectably decided to bow down at 29 years old. I mean, he's not 24 or 25, where he still has a lot of years that he could represent the national team. But as he looks at this national team, he sees the roster and he sees the guys that are most likely going to get the time. When is he going to get that time to play? Yeah. And is it just a big waste? Not that it's a big waste, as Cristiano mentioned. Being called up to the national team, whether you play or not, it shouldn't be a waste of your time. It should be a feeling of honor and pride.
And this national team is at a crossroads. Anyways, if correct me if I'm wrong, this is Fernando Santos' last tournament in charge, right? And they are supposed to have somebody else in charge to lead them through the World Cup qualifying, right? So I think
who knows?
Yeah, I think they're at a crossroads with this team. You've seen a lot of these same faces represent the country here, so an injection of some new blood into the program wouldn't hurt the national team. And like you said, it's not like Rafa is younger than he is. He is 29, and usually these decisions are made in your younger 30s. But if he doesn't feel like he's being utilized, and hey, like I said, we'll take him and we'll give him the extra rest there.
Yeah. Diogenes, clearly there's more to this than we think, or maybe he really hates Santos, which I don't blame him. And then he says, I got to say, he's got balls for doing this with a contract up in 2 years. You'd think being a national team player would only boast his next contract. I think that Rafa at the age that he's at, and I think there was a piece of news on a paper that Benfica was looking to extend his contract for another 2 years. He's 29. At 31, let him finish out at 31, and then maybe take on a role in a lower team, or like maybe finish up at Braga where he played. I don't know. But I don't know. I don't think that Rafa is thinking about this World Cup as a trampoline for a big contract. And I think a player like that, is always very um, is a player that it's attractive to watch. I'm sure that he could go to the Middle East and make some money. I'm sure he could come to the MLS and make a nice chunk of change even at 31, 32 because he will still have that speed and that touch. But I don't know. I don't think he would look at the World Cup as a trampoline to get a bigger contract. Anyway, last topic. October, busy October, Oktoberfest for Benfica. We got Vitoria, which is Guimarães on the 1st. Then we got PSG on the 5th, Rio Ave on the 8th, PSG on the 8th, Porto, PSG on the 11th. Sorry, Porto on the 21st. So there's a 10-day break there between PSG and Porto. I think that's another international break. Yeah, I don't know what that is. But yeah, PSG, Porto on the 21st, Juventus on the 25th, and then Chaves on the 29th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a. It could be. It could be a Tassa. It could be a Tassa game. It could be a Tassa game. So that would be 8 games in October for Benfica. So that's 2 games a week basically. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and we got to see what the what international if there's any international break injuries, man. I would hate to see players come back from these silly international breaks with injuries. So yeah, I noticed that too. No, I just think it's something else. Hold on a second, Dave. Go ahead, speak. No. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I think you're gone. Let me see something here. At Go ahead, speak. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know, but we're gonna close it up. We're gonna close it up, guys. Thank you so much for sitting with us, and we'll be back in a couple weeks. Thanks. Take care, everyone. Dave, always good to speak to you, buddy. Later. Oh.